"Mom, please don't come anymore," my daughter whispered.
"Ryan says you're tearing our marriage apart." Before I could answer, the call ended. I sat there holding the silent phone, staring at my reflection in the kitchen window, wondering how the little girl who once ran into my arms after school could suddenly believe I was the enemy. The old coffee maker hummed behind me while the ceiling fan clicked overhead. Outside, a warm Tennessee breeze stirred the maple tree beside my porch. Everything looked ordinary. Nothing felt ordinary. My name is Margaret Collins. I'm 68 years old, a retired elementary school teacher living outside Franklin, Tennessee. My husband passed away 11 years ago, leaving me with our modest home, a worn porch swing, and enough memories to last a lifetime. Emily is our only child. We were never wealthy, but we always believed honesty mattered more than money. Before she married Ryan Carter, Emily called every Sunday afternoon. We'd share recipes, laugh about church gossip, and argue over who baked the better peach pie. After the wedding, the calls became shorter. Then they nearly stopped. Ryan always appeared polite. He carried groceries, opened doors, and called me Mrs. Collins. Folks at church admired him, but I'd catch Emily watching him before she answered simple questions, as though she needed permission to speak. It just didn't sit right. For 3 days, I resisted the urge to drive to Knoxville. I told myself every marriage needed room to grow. Then my neighbor Helen stopped by with fresh tomatoes from her garden. Without knowing anything about the phone call, she quietly asked, "Margaret, have you heard from Emily lately? She hasn't looked like herself these past few Sundays." That settled it. The next morning, I baked Emily's favorite peach cobbler, packed it beside a family photo album, and started my old sedan toward Knoxville. The county roads stretched beneath bright summer skies while pickup trucks rolled past fields of fresh-cut hay. I prayed the whole drive that I was simply worrying too much. When I pulled into Emily's driveway, Ryan's truck was already there. The curtains moved. Someone had been watching. Emily opened the door only a few inches. She forced a smile. Then, without saying a word, she slipped a folded note into my hand before Ryan stepped behind her and asked, "Everything all right, sweetheart?" I hid the note inside my purse, and suddenly realized Emily's hands were shaking. I smiled as though nothing unusual had happened and hugged Emily before stepping inside. The folded note remained hidden in my purse. Ryan welcomed me with his usual charm, offering sweet tea and insisting I make myself comfortable. To anyone looking in from the outside, we could have passed for an ordinary family enjoying a quiet afternoon. But I've lived long enough to know that silence often says more than words ever could. Emily barely spoke unless Ryan asked her something first. Every answer sounded rehearsed, and every smile disappeared the moment he looked away. He had some nerve pretending everything was perfect while my daughter looked like she hadn't slept in weeks. I wasn't about to argue with him in his own home. Instead, I watched. Folks notice more than people think. The house had changed since my last visit. The framed family photographs were gone, replaced by expensive decorations Emily never would have chosen. The handmade quilt I'd given them for their wedding had disappeared. Even the little ceramic angel Emily kept beside the fireplace was missing. Ryan talked constantly about investments, new furniture, and future plans, yet Emily never added a single opinion. Whenever I asked her a question, Ryan answered before she had the chance. That ain't right, I thought, but I kept my thoughts to myself. Before leaving, I hugged Emily again. She whispered so quietly I almost missed it, "Don't read the note here." Then she stepped back before Ryan noticed. I drove straight to the small park, where my late husband used to bring Emily when she was a little girl. The evening sun slipped behind the trees while crickets filled the air. My hands trembled as I unfolded the note. The handwriting was unmistakably Emily's. "Mom, please don't trust anything Ryan tells you. He's watching everything I do. I can't explain over the phone. Please don't confront him. He's already taken something that doesn't belong to me, and I'm afraid he'll do worse if he knows I told you. I don't know who I can trust anymore except you." I read the note again, feeling a chill despite the summer heat. Before I could gather my thoughts, my phone rang. The screen showed a number I didn't recognize. When I answered, a calm voice said, "Mrs. Collins, this is First Tennessee Bank. We're calling because your name is still listed as an emergency contact. We need to discuss several unusual transactions involving your daughter's savings account." My heart sank before she said another word. My heart pounded as I gripped the steering wheel. "This is Margaret Collins," I said. "Please tell me what's happened." The woman from First Tennessee Bank spoke calmly. She explained that because my name remained listed as the emergency contact on the savings account Emily had opened years before her marriage, the bank needed to verify several unusually large transactions before completing an internal fraud review. She couldn't legally reveal every detail over the phone, but she strongly advised Emily to contact the bank immediately. The call ended, but something inside me already knew the truth wasn't going to be simple. Instead of driving home, I headed straight to the attorney who had handled my late husband's estate. His office smelled of old paper and fresh coffee, and the ticking wall clock seemed louder than usual. He quietly read Emily's note from beginning to end without interrupting. When he finished, he folded it carefully and looked at me. "Mrs. Collins," he said, "your daughter may be asking for help the only way she safely can." 2 days later, Emily met us at the attorney's office while Ryan believed she was attending a women's Bible study. She looked exhausted, constantly glancing toward the window as if expecting him to appear at any moment. After explaining her legal rights, the attorney asked one simple question. "Did you authorize more than $100,000 in transfers from your savings account?" Emily stared at him in complete disbelief. "What transfers?" she whispered. He slid the bank records across the desk. Line after line showed money disappearing over the past 14 months. Every withdrawal carried what appeared to be Emily's signature. Tears filled her eyes as she slowly shook her head. "I never signed those," she said. "Ryan always handed me stacks of papers and told me they were insurance forms, tax documents, or refinancing paperwork. I trusted him." 3 days later, the handwriting examiner completed the comparison. Every disputed signature had been forged, every single one. Before we could absorb that discovery, the attorney received a certified envelope from an insurance company. Inside was a recently updated life insurance policy worth $500,000. My stomach tightened as he turned to the final page. Then he looked at Emily, removed his glasses, and quietly said, "Your husband changed the beneficiary, and the name listed here isn't yours." The attorney slowly turned the last page toward us. My eyes settled on the name, but it wasn't mine. It wasn't another member of our family, and it certainly wasn't Emily's. The beneficiary was a woman named Ashley Monroe. None of us had ever heard that name before. Emily stared at the document until tears quietly rolled down her cheeks. "Ryan told me he updated the policy because the mortgage company required it," she whispered. "He promised I was still the beneficiary." The attorney gently shook his head. "He lied." He immediately contacted the insurance company, which confirmed Ryan had personally submitted every change without Emily present, with the forged signatures, missing savings, and the insurance documents now connected. The district attorney's financial crimes unit officially opened an investigation. What had begun as a suspicious bank transfer had become a much larger case. The attorney advised Emily not to return home alone. That evening, she came back with me for the first time in nearly 2 years. Rain tapped softly against my old tin roof while we sat at the kitchen table, untouched cups of coffee growing cold between us. Just before midnight, Emily finally found the courage to tell me everything. Ryan had slowly separated her from family and friends, controlled every paycheck she earned, monitored her phone calls, and convinced her that everyone, including me, wanted to destroy their marriage. Whenever she questioned him, he apologized, brought flowers, and promised he would change. He never did. I reached across the table and held her hand. She didn't need a lecture. She needed someone who believed her. The next morning, Emily signed sworn statements describing every detail she could remember. The attorney immediately filed emergency motions freezing the remaining accounts before Ryan could move another dollar. Investigators executed search warrants that same afternoon, removing computers, financial records, and locked file boxes from the house. Ryan stood calmly on the porch telling curious neighbors. Everything was a misunderstanding. Folks notice more than people think, and by sunset, people had already begun questioning his story. 1 week later, the courtroom filled with quiet spectators. Ryan walked in wearing the same confident smile he always wore. Then the lead investigator placed a sealed evidence box before the judge. After examining its contents, the judge slowly looked up and asked, "Mr. Carter, would you care to explain this?" The courtroom became so quiet. I could hear the old clock ticking above the judge's bench. Ryan looked at the sealed evidence box, then at his attorney, but neither of them spoke. Inside were pages covered with practice copies of Emily's signature, hidden bank statements, insurance records, and emails tracing every stolen dollar into accounts only Ryan controlled. There was even a notebook detailing dates, transfers, and passwords. The confidence he had worn for 2 years disappeared in an instant. For the first time since I met him, I wasn't looking at a charming husband. I was looking at a man who had finally run out of lies. The hearings continued over the next several weeks. One witness after another confirmed the truth. The handwriting examiner testified that every disputed signature had been forged. Bank officials traced the missing money through multiple accounts. The insurance representative confirmed Emily had never approved changing the beneficiary. Then Ashley Monroe herself took the witness stand. She testified she had dated Ryan briefly, but ended the relationship the moment she discovered he was married. She had no idea he had listed her as the beneficiary on Emily's policy. With every witness, Ryan's carefully built story collapsed a little further. Nobody argued. Nobody shouted. The evidence spoke for itself. The judge declared every fraudulent financial document invalid, ordered Ryan to repay the stolen money, and referred the forgery and fraud charges for criminal prosecution. Emily regained complete control of her remaining assets, and the insurance policy was restored to its original terms. As people quietly left the courthouse, no one rushed to defend Ryan. Folks notice more than people think, and by then they had noticed everything. Months later, Emily rented a small house just outside Franklin. It wasn't fancy, but it was peaceful. We planted tomatoes together in the backyard, returned to Sunday church without fear, and spent warm evenings sitting on my old porch swing. One afternoon, she looked at me with the same smile. I remembered from before she met Ryan. "Mom," she said softly, "thank you for believing me when I couldn't believe myself." I reached over and squeezed her hand. "You never needed someone to fight your battles," I told her. "You only needed someone who wouldn't let you fight them alone." As the crickets began singing and the sun slipped behind the Tennessee hills, I realized something my late husband had always said was true. The truth may walk slowly, but it always arrives before justice leaves.